Good evening to you, Mr. Klopper. How many schools of the almost 25,000 are not ready to reopen on Monday?
Well, let's put it like that. We think that only schools in the Western Cape are in a position to open, and then not all the schools. And in Gauteng, we know that there is a percentage of schools that may open, but there are many schools that have not received any of the personal protection equipment. And then of the other 7 provinces, that's going to be quite a battle to open any of the schools there. And that is why the Northern Cape have taken the decision to postpone until the 8th of June. We know that in the Eastern Cape there are quite developments taking place there, and also in KZN. But the reality is that none of the other 7 provinces are really in a position to open the schools.
Are you able to give me a percentage of how many schools are in fact not ready?
We would say anything between 70 to 80,000.
Sorry, there are only 25,000 schools. So just tell me what percentage of schools are not ready?
70 to 80% of the schools
are not ready.
Are not ready.
That is a huge number. Tell me about this this united front where you're saying even ready schools should not reopen as an act of solidarity. Just tell us your reasoning behind that.
The reasoning behind that is that many of the affluent schools, and those are the schools that are ready at the moment, it's not because of the department that they are ready, it's because of the school governing bodies and the teachers taking responsibility, and because they have the funds to do that. So let's be clear about that. It's not the department that put them in the position to be able to open. It's the parents and the teachers. The other schools of the poorer communities, they do not have the means to open those schools and clean the schools and buy masks and the personal protection equipment. And the feeling is among all the teachers, teacher unions and the school governing body organizations that it would be better to show solidarity with those schools and not, exacerbate the difference in the inequalities between the various schools.
Do you have buy-in from all teachers? I'm thinking, perhaps a teacher at a private school. Are all teachers going to stay away on Monday? And is there anything that could stop that? I know there's a last-ditch meeting tomorrow. I'm just wondering what on earth's difference it can make if 70% of schools, as you say, are not compliant.
Well, we know that the private schools, they have also had discussions with the ministry. They have had their own discussions. We think it would be wise if all the schools could start on the same date and make sure, that everybody starts, from the same starting line. The reality is, as I've intimated, is that many of the affluent schools, they've had online teaching. They are in a position to start. And the majority of schools are not in that particular position. And that makes it difficult. And on a moral level, it makes it difficult to explain and justify.
Tell me about this meeting tomorrow. You're due to meet with the Basic Education Minister. Are you hopeful it can actually resolve things?
It's not just a meeting with the Minister. It's also a meeting with the Deputy Minister and the 9 MECs for education of the 9 provinces. And hopefully we will be able to reach an amicable settlement on how to start schooling again. And let's be honest about this. We all dearly would like the school year to start. We would all dearly like the education rights of all learners to be honoured and respected. But likewise, we say that life, safety and health is also important. That must also be a matter that must be tended to.
The other thing I'd like to ask you about is I understand that all the unions have done a survey with their teachers, finding out which teachers have comorbidities. Are you able to tell us what percentage of the teaching workforce, which I think is around 400,000, what percentage have comorbidities and might not be able to return to the classroom for health reasons?
Well, let's put it like that. The average age of teachers in South Africa is 50 years. If you just look at the spread and the distribution of the ages, we would say that a large percentage, let's be conservative and let's say 10 to 15% of that particular number could suffer from comorbidities and could be older than 60 years. And let's be honest about this as well, that many of the school management teams and school principals are educators older than 60 years. And if the decision is that they must remain at home because they're older than 60, it's going to have a devastating effect on education itself. We haven't finalized those collective agreements, We're on the verge of doing it, but you know that many of the schools have started this week already. There's been an insistence by the Western Cape and by Gauteng to be back at school, and even that has not been in place. But hopefully we will be able to get that in place.
What do you say to all parents, and in particular a parent of a child who's in matric in an area where there has been no distance learning? We know that this pandemic, as far as we know at this stage, over the last 4 months, children don't seem to be adversely affected. It is often a mild infection, if not asymptomatic. Compare that against the reality of a child perhaps losing out on an entire matric year, and also, let's not forget, missing out on a meal at school, as many of our children do depend on a hot meal at school.
We're acutely aware of that. We know that 80% of learners are asymptomatic. We know that a large percentage of educators are asymptomatic. But as we have said now to each other, and that is that many of the teachers are older than 50 years old. And that is a vulnerable group. We've also intimated and said that many of the teachers suffer from comorbidities. And we mentioned something like 10 to 15%. And even though the learners may not be, let's say, vulnerable to the sickness, they are the distributors and the spreaders of the disease to educators and to the communities, and that is our fear. We even picked it up that today 4 cases of COVID-19 have been identified amongst the members of school management teams. So it tells you a bit, how easily this is spread. Coming back to the learners, and more specifically the grade 12s, we would say that let's focus on the grade 12s. Let's get them in place. We know and we can understand that parents are anxious about that. But we think that if we deal with that, let's say, coherently, we deal with it in terms of a specific plan, a lot can be done for them.
All right. I'm sorry, our line is not too great, but you've given us lots of information this evening, and I thank you for your time.